While the world is watching the bridge in Florida, the real war has just started in the skies over Minnesota. We have just received confirmation from sources inside the Pentagon that the 11th Airborne Division, the Arctic Angels based in Alaska, has been placed on DEFCON 3 alert status. They are not prepping for a deployment to Europe. They are not prepping for the Middle East. Their flight plan has them landing at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport in exactly 6 hours. Good afternoon, I am Jack Cross. For the first time in our lifetime, the President of the United States is about to cross the ultimate red line. He is preparing to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. This isn't the National Guard. These are active duty shock troops. And the governor of Minnesota has just issued a warning that sounds like a declaration of war. He stated that any federal soldier who steps off a plane in his state will be arrested on sight. Buckle up. The Cold War is over. The hot war is about to begin. To understand why this is happening, we have to look at the law that everyone is ignoring. Everyone keeps talking about the Posse Comitatus Act, the law that says the U.S. Army cannot police American citizens. It is the bedrock of our civil liberty. It prevents a military dictatorship. But there is one exception, one loophole that overrides everything else, the Insurrection Act. If the president declares that a state is unable to enforce the law or is refusing to enforce the law, he can send in the military without the governor's permission. He doesn't need an invitation. He calls it an invasion. The White House is arguing that the protests in Minneapolis have turned into organized rebellion. But the governor says the protests are peaceful and that the president is using the army to crush political dissent. So here is the nightmare scenario for tonight. When those C-17s touch down, who controls the runway? The airport police answer to the governor. The 11th Airborne answers to the president. If the police park their cruisers on the runway to block the landing, does the Air Force have permission to clear them? Let's be very clear about the mismatch here. We aren't talking about tear gas and riot shields anymore. The 11th Airborne brings Stryker combat vehicles. They bring heavy weapons. If they deploy to the streets of Minneapolis, the local police cannot stop them physically, but they can stop them legally. The state attorney general has already drafted warrants of arrest for the commanding officers of the 11th Airborne. Imagine that image. A U.S. Army general steps off a plane, and a county sheriff tries to put him in handcuffs for kidnapping and trespassing. It sounds insane, but under Minnesota state law, those soldiers have no jurisdiction. Under federal law, they have total jurisdiction. Two legal systems are about to crash into each other at 500 miles per hour. Why the 11th Airborne? Why bring troops all the way from Alaska? This is a strategic choice. The 11th Airborne is known as the Arctic Angels. They are specialists in cold weather warfare. Minnesota in January is a frozen battlefield. These men are trained to operate in exactly these conditions. But there is a darker reason. Military analysts believe the president chose a unit from Alaska because they are geographically and culturally removed from the politics of the lower 48 states. If he had called up a unit from a neighboring state, like Wisconsin or Iowa, there is a risk that the soldiers would sympathize with the locals. They might have family there. But the Arctic Angels? They are isolated, they are professional, and they are loyal to the chain of command. They are being brought in because they will not hesitate. We have obtained a leaked copy of the Rules of Engagement card that was allegedly issued to the platoon leaders this morning. Usually, inside the U.S., soldiers are told to use minimum force, but this card reportedly authorizes escalation of force to secure key infrastructure. That includes power plants, water treatment facilities, and broadcast towers. This implies that the mission isn't just to stop a riot, it is to occupy the city. It is to take control of the essential services of Minneapolis. The governor knows this. That is why he has mobilized the State Patrol to surround these facilities. He is trying to get there first. We are seeing a race to seize the strategic assets of an American city before the sun goes down. Let's talk about the money. While the troops are loading up, the financial markets are reacting. The Dow Jones dropped 2,000 points in the last hour. Why? Because Wall Street hates uncertainty. And there is nothing more uncertain than the U.S. military seizing a major economic hub. Major corporations headquartered in Minneapolis, Target, Best Buy, United Health Group, are currently evacuating their executive staff. Private jets are leaving St. Paul every 3 minutes. They know something we don't. They know that once the airspace is closed, nobody gets out. This brings us to the constitutional crisis. Where is the Supreme Court? Usually, in a conflict between a state and the federal government, the court steps in to mediate. But right now, the Supreme Court is silent. Legal scholars call this the political question doctrine. It means the court often refuses to get involved in disputes over military authority. They are washing their hands of it. They are letting the president and the governor fight it out in the streets. Without the Supreme Court, there is no referee. There is no one to blow the whistle and say, "Stop." The only thing stopping a firefight is the discipline of the men on the ground. And that is a fragile thing. All it takes is one nervous 18-year-old soldier or one angry police officer, and a single shot could spark a massacre. Let's look at the historical precedent. We have seen this before, but never on this scale. In 1957, President Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to Little Rock, Arkansas, to enforce desegregation. In 1992, the Marines went into Los Angeles during the Rodney King riots. But in both those cases, the mission was clear, and the local police eventually cooperated. This is different. The local government has declared the federal troops to be hostile invaders. The sheriff of Hennepin County has gone on record saying, "We do not recognize the authority of the Insurrection Act in this county. Any attempt to disarm my deputies will be met with resistance." Think about that. Resistance. That is a polite word for combat. We are looking at a scenario where American law enforcement and American military personnel could be pointing loaded weapons at each other. And what about the civilians? What happens to the people of Minneapolis? If the Insurrection Act is fully invoked, civil rights are suspended. Habeas corpus, the right to see a judge after arrest, can be suspended. The military can arrest anyone deemed a security threat and hold them without trial. This isn't conspiracy theory, this is the text of the law. We are hearing reports that detention centers are being set up at the Fort Snelling Reserve Base nearby. Are these for the rioters, or are they for the politicians who oppose the president? The line is very blurry. Let's go back to the flight path. The C-17s are currently over Canadian airspace. They will cross the border in roughly 2 hours. Once they cross that border, they are in U.S. airspace, but under federal control. The governor has threatened to block the runways with snowplows. It sounds ridiculous, but a wall of heavy snowplows is a formidable barrier. If the planes cannot land, they will have to divert or perform a combat drop. A combat drop over a populated city, paratroopers jumping into the suburbs of Minneapolis, it seems impossible. But the 11th Airborne is trained for exactly that. If they cannot land the planes, they jump. And if they jump, they are not landing in a secure zone. They are landing in backyards, in parks, in school playgrounds. This turns the entire city into a drop zone. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. Seeing paratroopers descend from the sky is an image we associate with Red Dawn, not the evening news. It sends a message to every other governor in the country. Do not defy the White House. This is not just about Minnesota. This is a message to California, to New York, to Illinois. The president is establishing a new precedent. He is saying that the federal government has the ultimate power, and he is willing to use the military to prove it. But there is a risk, a massive risk. If the military splits, if the soldiers refuse the order. We have heard rumors of conscientious objectors within the ranks. Officers who are quietly asking their lawyers if this order is lawful. The Uniform Code of Military Justice says a soldier must obey all lawful orders. But is deploying combat troops against U.S. citizens lawful? That is the billion-dollar question. If a captain decides the order is illegal and refuses to deploy his company, the whole operation collapses. Mutiny is the one thing the Pentagon fears more than the enemy. As we count down the minutes, the silence from the vice president is deafening. Usually, the VP is the bridge between the White House and the states, but reports suggest the vice president has been excluded from these meetings. This operation is being run by a small circle of loyalists within the West Wing. The adults in the room have left the building. So, what should you do? If you are in Minneapolis, the advice from local authorities is to shelter in place. Do not go to the airport. Do not go to the protest zones. If the military establishes a perimeter, do not cross it. Deadly force is authorized. This is not a drill. For the rest of us watching from home, we need to understand that the rules of the game have changed. The Constitution is a contract. It relies on both sides agreeing to follow the rules. But today, one side tore up the rulebook and the other side pulled out a gun. The contract is void. We are entering a period of dual sovereignty, two governments claiming to be the legitimate authority over the same piece of land. History tells us that dual sovereignty only ends one way. One side conquers the other. There is no compromise. There is no mediation. There is only victory or defeat. The flight time from Alaska to Minnesota is roughly 5 hours. That means we have a 5-hour window for the Supreme Court to intervene. If they don't, if the justices stay silent, Then the wheels touch the ground at 8 p.m. tonight. We are witnessing the end of the United States. We are watching a president treat an American city like a foreign battlefield. And we are watching a governor treat the U.S. Army like a hostile invading force. I'm Jack Cross. I'll be tracking the flight path. Don't blink.